Okay, I should have started the recording earlier because I want to start these. So I am last year was kind of like getting disciplined with doing the Q&As. I feel like I work so closely with each one of you that nobody really has a need to come, but there's a lot of things that I answer multiple times a week that I would love to answer here. And so I've planned out the first part of the year. And so we're going to do topics each month. So our topic for January is stress. If you can't make it to the Q&As, I know a lot of you like just jobs and stuff like that, it doesn't work out. I will record them. Um, I'm going to talk about stress today and just identifying stress triggers and how it affects a lot of different things. So that's going to be our theme for this month. And I'm doing a stress workshop at the end of January that is applicable to everybody, but also like friends that that may benefit from it and that sort of thing. You are welcome to invite. It's for anybody. It's totally free. You do not have to be a client to attend. It's going to be on January 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and I'll keep talking about that as we go. We are doing these Q&As for you guys like VIP clients every single week. So if you have questions, bring them. We will start them with celebrations. And I should have pushed record earlier because Liz was talking about she started an elimination diet a little over a week ago. And after the initial like detox kind of stuff, she's feeling a lot better now. I also think it's so helpful for like all of you who are doing elimination diets to come and kind of bounce ideas off each other. That's a good time that you and I can kind of talk about like she and I were talking about like what's a sample day look like, and we want this to be doable. I don't want you guys to be, I mean, I'm here to make this as easy as possible for you. So I do feel like the more conversation we have about it, the more other women doing it, it can be really helpful. So I won't make Liz repeat her celebration, but her celebration is that she started an elimination diet. And I'm so proud of all of you who have even agreed to do that. And she's feeling a lot better, a little over a weekend, getting started on her supplements and all that good stuff. So let's get into stress. And this is something that I feel like, gosh, we throw that term around and it's like, what does this even mean? What am I talking about? Sometimes I feel like a lot of us, me personally, like almost have in the past, like worn it as a badge of honor and like that just defines who I am. And there's like not a lot I can do about it. But the more I study functional medicine, the more I work with clients, the more I go through my own personal journey, the more I feel like this is significant. And you'll see a lot on Instagram and stuff like that about your nervous system and healing your nervous system. And I'm like, well, what does that look like practically for me? And all of us have been through different things in our lives, different traumatic events, different experiences. We don't have control over that, but we can control how we respond to it and like the tools that are in our toolbox to deal with it appropriately. So I want to go through this today. I hope that it will be helpful. I'll make sure that everyone gets a copy of the recording. Um, and I do think Liz and I were also talking about there is some sort of tech issue, and I have an appointment with my tech person to review today. A lot of you are not getting the Zoom link as far as the reminders for the Q&As. So bear with me as I navigate all of that. If there's ever a topic that you guys want me to talk about, please let me know. Or if you have questions ahead of time, you can give them to me. And even if you can't be on the Q&A, I can answer them and send it to you and all that good stuff. I will try not to make this very long because I know it's hard to go back and listen to things that are long. And that's part of what we'll talk about today. So today, we're going to talk about identifying your personal stress triggers and how we use a functional medicine approach to dealing with stress, identifying the triggers, and ultimately finding healing. So, we're going to look at the connection between stress, cortisol, and your gut, which every one of you, if you're here, you are doing gut work. We're doing a gut test. That is like my number one must do. And then some of you are doing everything where we're doing the hormones and the cortisol and the genetics and all that kind of stuff. But everyone is doing gut. So we'll talk about the impact there. So why does knowing your stress matter? Stress triggers matter. And it really is simple, but the more we can identify what the triggers are, the more we can come up with like actionable, practical, doable steps to handle it. So cortisol, gets thrown around in a lot of different arenas, social media, all kinds of stuff. I think a lot of times it's kind of like the word inflammation where we view it as something negative. Cortisol in itself is not a bad thing. We need that. It's when it becomes just like inflammation, that's our body's way of repairing and healing. When it becomes that chronic low grade inflammation or chronic stress, that's when we run into problems. So it is the body's primary stress hormone. And if it stays elevated chronically and doesn't work in short bursts like it's supposed to, that's when we get problems. It has a full body impact. So if you have elevated cortisol chronically, it disrupts your digestion. It actually puts holes like in the intestinal barrier and creates what we call leaky gut. It weakens your immunity. It destabilizes your mood and drains your energy. It's like you're in fight or flight, like go, 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 can't come down from that all the time. Okay. So the first step is to understand like what are your triggers so that we can again have some actionable practical steps to deal with it. And this takes time. This is not something that's like, okay, I have identified it and all of a sudden starting now, I'm going to just totally overhaul everything. So it's a continual process. It takes time, but prioritizing it, I feel like, is the first step to healing. So let's talk about cortisol and the gut health link. So first, cortisol's functions are to regulate blood sugar, to manage inflammation throughout the body, and to control your circadian rhythm, like your natural sleep-wake cycle. When it becomes chronically elevated, though, like I mentioned just a minute ago, cortisol actually compromises the integrity of the gut lining and increases intestinal permeability. That's a lot of words that basically mean instead of tight junctions in the intestinal wall or the gut, it becomes loose. It's not as strong, it's not as tight, and it lets a lot of undigested food particles, toxins back into the bloodstream. This is what we call leaky gut, and it triggers systemic inflammation. It also puts your immune system on high alert. This is where we start seeing a lot of skin issues, a lot of food intolerance, and it really has a full body impact. It also plays a big role in your brain health. Remember that the gut and the brain are constantly in communication. And if we're letting all of these things back into the system that shouldn't be there, it really can impact mood and energy and everything like that. So the real world impact is that the gut disruption can significantly worsen things like IBS, acid reflux, bloating. So, and you may notice that like during stressful periods that your stomach is messed up, that again, that gut brain connection is significant and it really does have a full body impact. What I find really fascinating and encouraging is that your gut lining completely regenerates every 3 to 5 days, which means that we have a lot of opportunities to make changes and to actually see healing. Okay. It does take time more from like a brain retraining, rewiring standpoint, but the gut regenerates very frequently, which is really cool. How stress impacts the gut. Let's talk a little bit more about the HPA axis. So we get the HPA activation. HPA stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. That's like the body's stress response system. So this releases cortisol into the bloodstream. Cortisol, think about like in the history of humans hundreds of years ago, like running from a tiger, okay? Or even think about like a zebra running from a tiger. So we get that cortisol boost, and so all of our resources are going to survival, okay? So all our blood flow is going to like our leg muscles to run, not to our stomach to digest. So we get digested, it slows digestive motility. So for all of us who struggle with constipation, not going to the bathroom at least 1 to 2 times a day, this is huge. And we can do so much gut work. And if we don't address this, we're never going to completely make it better. It increases the gut nerve sensitivity and disrupts the balance in the microbiome and the whole ecosystem. So when we see lots of low good bacteria, when we see that secretory IgA, like your immune system number on the lower end, when we're dealing with things like constipation and that sort of thing, those are the effects that cortisol has had on your gut over time. So, the uncomfortable results, you can have bloating, increased inflammation, discomfort, constipation, all of those things. All right. So when we're talking about like, okay, what are the triggers? Everybody is different, and I'm going to go through some of the common ones, but I would really encourage you guys to kind of think through what are my triggers? Is it sometimes it's like excessive sound, and we'll go through all that, but it can be emotional. It can be like deadlines, work pressure, intense job, things like that. Can be more relationship, finances, major life transitions. It can be past trauma. It can be like childhood or even, just things that have happened that, obviously are emotional triggers. And again, we can't control those, but we can really reteach our brain how to deal with them. We can have physical triggers. So poor sleep or not enough sleep is going to make all of this 10 times worse. Physical overexertion. So, taking physical activity to an extreme and never giving your body time to recover. Even things like for me, sometimes it's not cooling down from a workout. And so, never like if you don't cool down after your workout, you don't ever come back to the rest and digest system. You're just staying in fight or flight. Like this morning, I manage to work out. I run downstairs. I start packing lunches, getting the kids ready for school. And I have to be really intentional about calming down, bringing my heart rate back down so that I don't end up staying in fight or flight all day long. Processed food plays a big role. Chronic pain causes cortisol to be chronically elevated because cortisol is anti-inflammatory to a point. And then illness would go right along with pain. And then something else I want to just say in regards to that, and kind of going back to the cooling down after workouts, but there is, I call it like rushing woman syndrome, where we are constantly rushing or constantly doing things like they're urgent. Um, I think a lot of that comes with motherhood, but probably you have a personality that may lean you in that direction anyway. So really just like lowering your shoulders, slowing down, realizing that everything is not a race, everything does not have to be rushed, and allowing yourself to like live in that comfortably. Now, I get that we all have like things that we have to be to, and in the moment, like it can feel like, oh my gosh, kids, get your shoes on, get in the car, we have to go. But I would encourage you to kind of look at things and figure out where do I need to put some margin, where can I put some margin so that everything is not always a rush? Okay. Environmental triggers, noise pollution. So this can be a lot of different things, but when I say that, what I'm meaning is like just the constant like auditory overstimulation. That's part of why I said I wanted to keep this short, because I don't want you to have to listen to me talk and like take in all this information and feel like, oh my gosh, what do I need to change? Um, I have stopped listening to like podcasts or thing like when I drive in the car, it's quiet. When I'm getting ready, like I used to feel like, okay, I need to check this off my list. I wanted to listen to this. I wanted to listen to this. And it becomes like this noise overstimulation constantly. I'm not saying that you can't ever do those things, but just don't be in the habit of being so, uh, not resourceful, but so, oh my gosh, what is the word it's leaving me? Efficient, that you have to be listening to something or like making such great use of your time that you're like always exposed to noise. Okay. Cluttered spaces. This is one of my huge New Year's resolutions. If any of you want to join me, I would love for you to. I am trying to like throw a ton of crap away and really declutter. Every time I walk in my boys' bedrooms, I feel like a stress response. And so my plan is while they're at school to go in there with a trash bag and like totally overhaul things. Okay. I get hung up in like, oh, I want to do the whole room. I want to do the whole closet. My goal is to set aside like 15 to 20 minutes a day to just throw a couple things away. Okay. It doesn't have to be the entire project in one swoop. Digital overload and screen time, that can go back to the podcast thing, even just, scrolling social media. Like the amount of time that we have this in our hands is like time that you are not making progress here. And I am very convicted about that. It's also something that I am working on I, for a lot of the time last year, was picking this up with my coffee first thing in the morning, and my Aura Ring was giving me terrible recovery scores and saying that something was stressing my body or my nervous system. And so I shifted it. I'm like, I am not touching this for 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes after I wake up. And it was like so weird how my scores immediately improved because I wasn't like, I'm sitting there sipping coffee that's naturally increasing cortisol and getting stressed, adding to my to-do list with my phone in my hand. It really can go a long way to be intentional with putting the electronics down, giving yourself some space and just some time. Okay. Toxic relationships or workplaces that can be a little bit harder to deal with. Nutritional triggers, so excessive caffeine intake. So remember, when you drink coffee, you're giving yourself just like an automatic cortisol boost, which most of us like don't need in the morning. So I do 1 cup of regular coffee, 1 cup of decaf. But after that first cup of coffee, I switch to decaf. I still love the taste of coffee. Please don't ever take it away from me, but that is what I feel like works well for me. Um, Blood sugar spikes from refined sugar. So those of you doing elimination diets, when we get rid of sugar, it is incredible because when we can keep your blood sugar here with like protein and fat and fiber filled carbs, you're not doing the roller coaster all day when you're like, boom. And then when you start plummeting, it's like headache, shaky, I need to eat, food noise, cravings, all that kind of stuff. So the blood sugar spikes are huge. Unidentified food sensitivities, and just irregular eating patterns. Okay, so how can we practically manage these things? One thing that I want to say real quick is to remember, and we'll talk more about this as we go. Remember, the whole month is going to be on stress. Your brain and body doesn't know the difference between actual or perceived stress. So let's use the analogy of like a meeting with your boss. Actual stress is like you have a meeting with your boss and you have a stress response. Perceived stress is I think I might have a meeting with my boss, and even the thought of that causes a stress response. Anticipatory stress. So maybe you have a meeting coming up with your boss, but it's not in that moment. You know it's later on today, and you have a stress response all throughout the day because you know that that meeting is coming. Our brains and bodies don't know the difference. We get the same physical response. So, again, something that I have struggled with and by the grace of God have really improved. Just worry and making mountains out of molehills and thinking about the what ifs and all those things that affects you the same way than if an actual very stressful traumatic event happened. Okay. Um, so again, back to strategies to manage it. So I love the Dutch test. I love looking at, okay, what is the cortisol pattern? Is it high or low? If you're in the program, you should be taking assessments to look at if you're hypo or hyper cortisol. If we do a Dutch test, I can tell that just by looking at it because then we can tailor it specifically to your needs. So a lot of times when I look at that and I see like, okay, we're having a big cortisol spike in the afternoon. Are you drinking caffeine in the afternoon? Maybe we can add some breath work there. Like it allows us to be more intentional. So personalized testing is always a great tool. But even if we're not doing that, or whether or not we're doing that, stabilizing your blood sugar with balanced meals. So whole foods, making sure we're getting protein and good healthy fat at each meal, fiber filled carbs, that's keeping our blood sugar more steady, eliminating processed foods that trigger inflammation and introduce gut healing foods to support microbiome diversity. So all of you have done your gut test, and those of you who haven't done it yet, if you're listening to this, we'll go through it together. We'll talk about, okay, what foods do we want to add in? And we'll talk through like your personalized plan. Mind body integration. So things like mindfulness meditation, therapeutic breath work, let me in nature immersion to lower cortisol levels. Let me talk through these because these sound like kind of overwhelming words, but a couple just real practical things that work well for me in my busy, crazy life is 4-4-6 breathing. So breathing in for 4, holding it for 4, breathing out through 6 for 6. This stimulates the vagus nerve, which is what turns off the fight or flight and turns on the rest and digest. Okay. So 446 breathing. I highly recommend the breath work app. It's breath work, WRK. There's no O in it. You can find the breathwork app. It's free. You can set like 2 to 3 minute timers that just guide you through some deep breathing. The Aura Ring has good like de-stress kind of things throughout the day. It seemed like it's hard to prioritize this, I feel like, because it seems like, oh my gosh, I just don't have time for that. That's not going to do that much, but it is incredible. And if we miss this, we can do all the gut healing in the world and it's not going to work. So please, please, please hear me. And then nature. So nature has a way of grounding us. This could be like standing barefoot in the grass. You know, the feeling when you go to the beach and you're standing on the sand, like looking at the ocean, and you just feel like this huge sense of like calm. We can replicate this. We don't have to be at the beach every day. One way that I like to do it is stepping out into the grass with your bare feet and like looking up at the stars. Or if you go for a morning walk, looking up at like the woods or a forest. Like do something every day that makes you feel small in relation to nature. It is really powerful. And then targeted supplements. So there's a lot of things like adaptogenic herbs. Magnesium is something that I feel like pretty much everybody should be on for nervous system support. B vitamins, especially if we've done DNA core and we see that you don't methylate well. So again, this has to be very personalized. We can use the testing to personalize it, but these are all things that can really help. I really like ashwagandha. I take a combination of like ashwagandha, L-theanine. I think there's one other thing in it that is leaving my brain right now, but we do want to know if you're hyper or hypocortisol. And we'll talk more about that in some of the Q&As to come. But basically, hyper is like you're always in fight or flight, you're anxious, you're on edge, you're hot, you're sweaty, like um you're tired, but you like can't wind down. And then hypocortisol happens after you've been in that hyper state for a long time. And it really is like your body just is like, you know what? I'm tired of the way this is making me feel. I'm just going to stop. And then we get like chronic significant fatigue and lack of motivation and that sort of thing. And the adaptogenic herbs and the things that we want to do for each one can be a little bit different, quite a bit different, depending on which one it is. So we'll talk more about that as we go. Throughout the month. If you have questions about anything I said, please ask. But that is it for this one. I think it's been like about 20-ish minutes, so I'll try to wrap it up. Liz, do you have any questions before we go about anything I said or any other questions?
No, that all sounded good. I did actually, so because I take the HCL Digest and
Mhm.
I just looked to reorder it and it says it's back ordered.
Yeah. It'll
So,
be back in soon.
okay.
I'll follow up on that too at my meeting today. Um,
Okay.
I think I just have too many people on it right now, but it should, I don't know if it'll let you place the order yet, but it should be back like any day.
Okay. So
And I'll
just
keep
go
you,
ahead and place
yeah,
the order and it's fine while I don't have it when it
yes.
runs out. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to do like some apple cider vinegar
Okay.
while you wait for it to come back, it's doing similar things. Um, but yeah, it's fine without it. Just use the apple cider vinegar and then we'll get it back on board when it's available.
Okay. Nope. That all sounded good.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. I'm going to figure out the issue with the email and make sure everyone's getting the emails. And then let me just give you our topic next week is creating a personalized stress management plan. So be thinking about that. If you have any questions related to stress, I'm sure like as we talk about it, more and more questions will come up. Let me know. All right, guys. See y'all later.